Hi there, I'm Susie Harrison, Commercial Editor of IoT World Today. In this Experts in IoT interview, we will examine IoT data collection with InfluxData. We will discuss some of the challenges of data collection, how organizations can mitigate those challenges, and what industries can do to prepare for future obstacles. So lending us their expertise today are InfluxData, maker of the time series data platform, where developers build IoT, analytics, and cloud applications. So I'm very pleased to welcome Brian Gilmore, Director of Product Management, IoT at InfluxData. Hi, Brian, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Susie. It's great to be here. Really appreciate the time.
So let's get straight into it. What are you seeing as the biggest obstacle to effective IoT data collection?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. I think it's kind of a multifaceted answer. I think there's of course all the technology issues. We've got like a myriad of standards, and there seems to be a new standard every day. I think sort of those silos of either commercial or other interests make it really difficult for the types of platforms to talk to each other in the way that they really need to make the vision, the promise of IoT and the solutions built on it a reality. I also think that we have some serious technical issues that we need to resolve. I think like we have, sort of a competition between the edge and the cloud right now in terms of where the data should be produced, where it should reside, and where it should be, sort of analyzed and acted upon. And I think we need to break that down pretty quickly, because I think, all of us probably who have been working in this field realize that it's a hybrid world, especially in IoT, and there's a distributed nature there that makes sort of getting information to the right place at the right time a little bit difficult. So, but I think generally these are all overcome easily by, just maybe a little bit of a change in mindset, and that's where it comes down to those sort of processes and people side of the equation. I think, people need to understand that we don't need to reinvent the wheel every time, right? There's already places that we can make interconnections. There's already great companies out there that are building middleware that's designed specifically for what folks working with IoT are trying to accomplish. And, it's oftentimes just a question of taking that first step, and just trying it, piloting, doing whatever you need.
Right. So, you touched on this a little bit, but how do organizations remove or work around these obstacles, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's being intentional about it. I think there's a lot of discovery to be done inside an organization, right? Not only just in terms of like what data you already have and where it resides, but like what does your team look like and where is your expertise? I think, a lot of organizations, especially on the industrial side, where still a lot of the, quote unquote IoT work is happening. They sort of work at the IT layer, and they work like within the chief data officers and with the data scientists. And for them, everything downstream on the operational side, like where the sensors and the actuators and the applications really run, that's like a black box, and they don't know who to talk to or how to talk to them. And so, there's an emergence of a type of systems integrator who I think their biggest sort of value add is just in sort of bridging that gap between the IT teams and the OT teams. And, the organizations that I've worked with in the past that have been successful around digital transformation projects, whether they're driven by industrial IoT or something else, have found that, when you start to talk to the people who run the equipment, run the machines, manage the assets, they have a whole bunch of ideas about how it would be really easy to get the data from point A to point B and, condition it to something that's actionable. And oftentimes that sort of eliminates that need for rip and replace or massive sort of investments in that data infrastructure for IoT. I think, most times customers don't need to resensor. They'll need to add sensors to some things, but, generally I think the information is oftentimes just like located in a historian or located in a file somewhere. And it's just a matter of talking to the experts who know, where it is and what it's doing to get sort of those hooks that you can start to mine some of that data.
Right. So that's some of the challenges we're facing at the moment, but looking to the future a bit more, what sorts of challenges do you see in data collection of the future?
Yeah, sure. I'm really excited to be working with the team. I am really starting to think about the physics of it all. I think right now we're struggling enough with, trying to get data from a factory floor to the cloud. And, I think as we move beyond maybe even the constraints of this planet, as we start to think about like, what does technology on the moon or technology on the Mars look like and on Mars, and how does that work? It gets pretty difficult pretty quickly because, speed of light is a real thing. And, we're going to have to really improve on our ability to sort of like manage data at the edge, especially when the edge is on another planet. And we'll start to see hopefully some quick sort of innovation and evolution of autonomy and other sort of AI and ML driven practices that will make it possible to sort of like command and control center from planet Earth, a large fleet of assets. Like right now we're great, because we have like, NASA's sort of aims have figured out like what it takes to control a Mars rover and stuff like that. But when you're talking about like hundreds or thousands of assets, many of which are going to look much more like oil rigs and factory floors than they will like modern robotics and data centers. I think we have to start figuring out and testing here how to get that latency, of sort of like data creation to data consumption, as small as possible, even over those incredibly long distances. And that's going to require thinking about like, how do you take storage and compute? How do you distribute it? How do you make, sort of like the queries of compute mobile and, allow them to move to the data where that makes sense and allow the data to move to the compute when that makes sense. And there's, very few companies out there, I think, that have really sort of thought about the scope of what that will mean in a much larger distributed data pipeline than anything we have to deal with on Earth here today.
So what do you think organizations can do now to prepare for those future obstacles?
Well, I think, I think the SpaceX's and the Loft Orbitals and those guys they're doing a really good job. We get to work with a few of these companies who are exploring some of these data challenges in space. It's been awesome. But I think like the sort of piloting needs to happen here today. I mean, we have to really start thinking about like not being okay with sort of like batch and ETL type models. Like everything, really needs to be streaming, and it needs to, be giving people like instantaneous visibility into what's going on at many, many assets, all over the place. Information needs to become more explorable in a real-time manner. We're working on, building the technology that's going to help companies do that. But ultimately, it'll come down to the organizations that, are managing the oil rigs, managing the factory floors, managing the solar power plants, all of these types of things, to really sort of, embrace the fact that their investment in this is really going to make a huge difference in terms of, what all of us are able to do in the future. I think we're getting close. I think people are starting to recognize what is like sort of the art of what is possible. And I'm looking forward for us to be able to sort of paint some of that for people and maybe do a little bit of inspiring around that, over the next, 6 months to a year. It'll be really exciting as we roll out some of the innovations we've been working on around, distributed data and distributed compute and all of that. So I think we'll just need to beta test it and then put it on a rocket and send it somewhere.
Thank you for joining us for this fast chat. I'm Susie Harrison from IoT World Today, and thank you again to Brian from InfluxData for joining us today.
Thank you so much.